Hi, I'm Maureen Fitzgerald and the author of this Substack post called Journal of a Recovering Lawyer. Today, I just wanted to share something I've really struggled with whether or not there is a God. And many of you know I'm a recovering Catholic. So I was indoctrinated and told to believe in certain things, and I just had to have faith. And now I realize that faith wasn't in myself, that faith was in somebody else's beliefs and also particularly a priest. So in any event, um, but here's the interesting thing. If you don't believe in a higher power, it can be very depressing, and you can end up in a situation where you feel like your life is meaningless or you're just not important or you're all alone. And that's why religion has been so effective at recruiting people, because there's that sense that you want to belong or feel like your life is meaningful. But where I got to eventually in writing this book on consciousness, Wake the F Up, is there's something else that you can have sort of in between. So I'm just going to explain that to you. And curiously enough, no surprise, I recently found a book almost on the topic, and it's called A God That Could Be Real. And it's written by Nancy Abrams, who's a scientist of scientists of scientists, and her husband is as well. And they've written books, books on science. And she really struggled with exactly what I'm struggling with, which is that I don't really believe in God. I'd like to prove that somehow God exists, but I realize that's not going to happen. But she too was desperate for this sense of having connection and envied other people who had, prayed to God and had this great relationship with God. And I was kind of similar. But in any event, she ended up at the same place where I ended up. And this is what I want to share with you is if you are raised like I was as a Catholic and believing that you had to have quote unquote faith, you might do what I did, which is throw the baby out with the bathwater. I ended up just going the opposite direction and saying, my parents lied to me. I can't believe this. I'm not going to believe this. Because I was basically taught that God is up in the sky, or at least apart from me, not me, and that I need a middle person. So the first step is just recognizing that that's actually preventing you from accessing this higher power, or whatever it is. Anyways, when I did write my book, there are two things that became very clear to me. When we are in an egoic state of mind and our ego is in charge, it refuses to believe that there's any God. It would mean its own death. So again, that's why religions are so successful, because they know that we can never convince ourselves. So you have to have quote unquote faith. But what I came to learn after reading about all the sages and how they don't have quote unquote faith, they don't have beliefs. They have a deep inner knowing. They have a direct experience with this higher intelligence, source, universe, whatever you call it. They don't say they believe, they say they know. And actually, there's a famous quote by Carl Jung where someone asked Carl Jung, "Do you believe in God?" And he, of course, said, "No, I just know there's a God." So, in any event, where do you go with all of this? I don't think you have to believe in a God at all. Like I said, your ego won't let you believe it anyway. So don't do that. I think the only way to truly um, uh, begin to experience God or have a relationship with God or a source or the infinite source of intelligence is to pretend that there is one. Just try it out, just like a scientific experiment. Just pretend that there is this consciousness, and there's this consciousness contains everything. And then once you sort of get over that hurdle, just pretend, then test it out, listen to it, sit in silence, have an exchange with it, see if it makes any difference. Look at the world as if it's all consciousness, and then say, is this helpful to me? And then, of course, I ended up where I often end up after doing all of this thinking about God and so on, is I end up at my book. And chapter 6 of my book is called Going Beyond the Mind. And I introduce some specific practices that I say are going beyond the mind. And that's exactly what I think the way to access higher source or believe in it. I don't like that word, but so of course, be in the moment. That's probably one of the most important practices is, as Eckhart Tolle often says, be here now, not looking past, not looking to the future. Also, sitting in silence. A lot of people call it meditation. I don't like that. I like to just say sitting in silence and being open to spaciousness. Because if you do, I promise you, and breathe, of course. And if you do, I promise you, you reach another state of sort of awareness. And I have lots, but the other one that's probably the most important thing is to surrender and be with the flow. And if you really do believe or know that there is an infinite source, you'd be amazed that, as I say to my friends, I'm getting messages all the time. I'm just not smart enough to pay attention. So, in any event, I think it's really important to believe in a higher power. It's taken me a long time to actually say that out loud. And I know in Alcoholics Anonymous, they demand that actually because they admit we are in our egoic state, are too weak to overcome addictions. So, and it's really important if you're feeling depressed or you feel like your life's not important, because you'll end up in a place where you actually believe that and your life won't be full for that reason. In any event, I want to emphasize I'm not asking you to ever, and never think anybody should ever ask you to believe anything, that it's all inside of you, that you can access it, and simply try it out. So, in any event, hopefully that helps you figure out or teases the question about whether or not there's a God or not. I am on the journey of trying to reconnect with the higher power, with whatever source it is, because I think it's actually directing most of my life. So I think it's important to pay attention. Anyways, have a good afternoon. It's a beautiful, beautiful sunny day here where I live, and enjoy it all.